Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I am your host, coming to you live on a Tuesday evening ahead of the Chargers Thursday night football game on Amazon Prime against the Kansas City Chiefs. Excited to dive into everything about this game with my guys, Tyler and Alex. Tyler, we'll start with you, man. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. And actually, wait, just getting it now. The Broncos are now taking a timeout.
My favorite thing about the whole time. Okay, first of all, Shannon Sharp was hilarious in that, but the entire time you just see Peyton just like progressively getting like more stressed out, just like, and then at the end just has like looks like he's about to have an aneurysm. It was so funny. Appreciate the content from Nathaniel Hackett last night. So, go Hawks, baby. Alex, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Yeah, we do have to worry about the Chiefs this week, but I appreciate the Broncos' effort in hiring Michael Scott from The Office as their head coach, who came out and said today that he would have done it over again if he had a chance to not take the 64-yard field goal.
Yeah, I'm sure that kept him up at night a little bit. The logic behind like taking a timeout and then deciding to kick a 64-yard field goal in Seattle instead of trusting Russell Wilson was hilarious. I wasn't watching. I don't have TV at my house right now. But I was sitting there refreshing the game cast on ESPN. And I was like, excuse me, they're trying a 64-yard field goal. So, oh man, it was a bad look. And those are the kind of games that, of course, you cannot afford to have in the AFC West in 2022. So hopefully the Chargers can avoid that kind of performance. So first and foremost, like I mentioned, we are here to preview the Chargers game with the Chiefs. Wanted to first talk about a little bit of a health update from the Los Angeles Chargers side of things. And of course, you have to start with Keenan Allen. I feel like probably not going to play in this matchup. It sounds like it's kind of considered a long shot as he deals with a hamstring injury. So going to be a big game, of course, for the rest of the wide receivers. We talked a little bit on the game, or at least Arjun, kind of brought up the question of, did the offense change with Keenan Allen? And I think after rewatching the broadcast, I think the answer is yes there. So there was a lot of DeAndre Carter in the slot. I'm curious to see how that changes this week without Keenan Allen, as they kind of have it's not a full week, obviously, but they have the 4 days to prepare for the Chiefs and prepare for life without Keenan Allen on Thursday. So, Alex, what are you kind of expecting as they kind of cope with the absence of Keenan Allen this week?
I think you have to keep things pretty similar to how they were on Sunday after Keenan Allen exited the game. I do think that means a lot of DeAndre Carter, but obviously Mike Williams has to get more involved. You have to get Josh Palmer more involved as well without Keenan Allen. And perhaps that means kind of opening up the playbook a little bit more. Wouldn't be surprised if they dialed up some deep shots to Jalen Guyton, who was pretty not in the game, too much last week in terms of his usage. And obviously against the Chiefs, he's kind of gotten usage, dropped that touchdown in the end zone in the first game last year. So, I do think they will try to get him involved, but really I think it's just a team effort. You probably pull up Bandy from the practice squad as well. So all things considered, you just kind of have to try to move on without him. Obviously, we'll get to X factors and all that kind of stuff later. But especially after his week 1 performance, Mike Williams has got to have a big game, and really just everyone else behind Keenan Allen and that wide receiver room has to step up.
Yeah, Alex said it best. Everyone's got to step up. Jalen Guyton needs to be more involved. Like, I get him not being wide receiver 3, but him playing 6 snaps or whatever it was. And by the way, he was wide open in the end zone. Would have kind of changed the narrative of what the conservative offense if Herbert just hit Guyton in the corner of the end zone, because he was wide open for a touchdown. So we'd like to see those guys get more involved. I'm still not convinced Bandy is the next guy up. I don't really know what they would do. I guess it depends on the flavor. I don't know if Bandy would be the next guy. He, based on preseason play, should be, but I don't know if they feel that way.
Yeah, if you're talking about replacing Keenan Allen, I think that conversation kind of starts with Josh Palmer. That's kind of been what they've done in the past, and I feel like he's the most similar in terms of body type, in terms of route running ability, physicality. So DeAndre Carter was fantastic on Sunday, right? He put out a great performance, and he could certainly do that again. But I feel like this could be a Jason Moore game in terms of activation, because you're putting Josh Palmer in the slot more frequently probably this weekend, as opposed to calling up Michael Manny. Then you have, again, just kind of an overcrowded slot room. So I do expect Jalen Guyton to play more. Of course, he's going to be needed to play on the outside a lot as well. So we'll see how that one works. Sounds like a positive step for JC Jackson today, as he was limited in practice. So the team will have their final walkthrough tomorrow morning, and then they will fly to Kansas City, which, as Alex points out, is not even in Kansas. But we'll know pretty early tomorrow about JC Jackson's status. Brandon Staley said yesterday that it was going to essentially be a 50-50 chance of him playing on Thursday. So Tyler, do you think he ends up playing, or do you think they kind of hold him out again? And is there kind of any change for you in how you would approach him being out from Sunday?
Any change? No, not really. Like, based on what they did on Sunday, I think that was kind of the best that they could do. I'm feeling more positive, and obviously there is a positive step forward with him being limited. If it were a knee injury, a hamstring, whatever, then I don't think he would. But again, they keep telling us this isn't an injury, it's just a wound.
Yeah.
So if he's been sprinting as early as last week, and now he's limited in practice, if there's no actual injury, I don't see why he couldn't be out there. If he's already able to practice in some limited capacity, I don't know what that looks like, but limited is certainly better than did not practice. So we'll see. But I do think he's trending positive, and I actually think he'll be out there.
I don't think he'll be out there. I kind of expect the Chargers to err on the side of caution, especially on the short week. I think this would be more of a conversation if he was playing Sunday. Also worth noting that their Monday and Tuesday reports are all, estimation in terms of where JC's at. Definitely think there's a solid chance he does play. It really might be 50-50, kind of like Brandon Staley has indicated, but I do sort of expect how they've approached sports performance in the past, obviously how much money they put into JC Jackson, that they kind of err on the side of caution here, and probably have him out against the Chiefs. You also don't have obviously the Chiefs offense is dynamic, but you don't necessarily have a Devontae Adams type player to worry about this week, which might lead them to also kind of erring on the side of caution when it comes to JC. It's not necessarily a game he needs to play, even though we would all like to see him out there. So I don't expect him to play. I think that they roll out mostly the same quarterback rotation that they did last week.
Yeah, this is going to be a big game for the slot defenders. Obviously, that's where Travis Kelce's going to spend a majority of his day. Juju led them and led the receiver room in targets and catches, which we'll talk about him in a little bit. So Bryce Callahan, of course, going to have a big game as well. So I don't think they necessarily need JC Jackson. I think you feel better about their chances of winning this game, obviously, if JC is out, because that gives them, in my opinion, a big time advantage when talking about secondary versus wide receivers. So we'll see. I think I lean towards him not playing, but like Tyler said, I am definitely more optimistic about that than I was a few days ago. So we'll see about JC Jackson. Again, we'll find out early tomorrow. Like Alex said, today's kind of an estimation. I know they had a workout. They obviously didn't practice. They're not going to practice tomorrow either, but they will have a bit more of a walkthrough kind of situation. So we'll see early there. Then the other one, again, really unfortunate, but Donald Parham has not practiced. There has been no positive update about him recently. So he, I guess you're just not expecting to see him anytime soon. So obviously on Sunday, the Chargers called up Richard Rodgers. He only played 3 snaps, if I remember correctly. He did get a target in the red zone, which I thought was kind of funny, given the timing and how little he played. But maybe we see them change that up a little bit with Hunter Kampmoyer, but sounds like they trust Richard Rodgers more at this point.
Yeah, trust him to play all of like 3 plays, like you said.
I know.
Donald Parham, like I can't figure out what's going on here at this point. I mean, wish kind of he would have gone to short-term IR and Fauco would have stayed on the roster. If it's getting worse or it hasn't got any better, like you got to do something with him. What is officially the designation now?
It's still a
In terms of-
hamstring issue. Yeah.
Oh, it's still the same hamstring injury. It just got worse. I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
Brandon Staley said that there was a setback, which was, led to him not playing.
Hmm.
So I think the setback was not last week before that, when they were on like their preseason bye week.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I don't
they
know.
must have, he was ramping up and then, re-aggravated it, I guess.
Yeah, I would like to see. So I only saw Nate Tice's tweet from The Athletic, but he said right now he's watching the Chargers tight ends do everything they can to ruin the game for the Chargers. If the blocking was that bad, then I would like to see Hunter Campmore activated over someone like Richard Rodgers, who just like is not a blocker and barely played anyway. I believe McKitty and Everett played like a pretty significant amount of snaps too. Like they were in 12 personnel a lot. They tried a lot of play action with those
They
guys.
did,
So
yeah.
I would love to see maybe Campmore get in there if it was as bad in the blocking department as Nate Tice indicates.
Yeah, gonna be interesting to see which one they activate for this game. I still think they'll probably lean on Richard Rodgers, given that they think it's the Chiefs and they need more of a receiver, even if it's for a whole 3 plays. Like like it was last game. Who knows? As far as the Donald Parham injury, I don't know what to make of it at this point, but I think that they feel like he probably will be out this game, given the short-term turnaround, and then you have 10 days until the Jags game. So I would expect kind of a positive development by that point. And if we don't have one by next Sunday, then I think we're probably looking at some kind of IR situation. But I think they're just trying to ride it out for as long as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. To Tyler's point, Daniel Popper tweeted this out, but True Media had Justin Herbert under pressure on like 48% of his dropbacks. And then you look at like the individual offensive line numbers and they all look really good. So, I didn't feel like the tight ends was as bad as Nate Tice is making them out to be. I haven't watched the all 22 yet. Just went up earlier today, but I rewatched the broadcast yesterday. And I didn't feel like it was a huge problem, but again, we'll have to wait and see there. All right, we'll move on here. We have a super chat from Michael Lopez. He says, I believe in Staley and co, but they need to truly let Herb cook, even when they're up 10. That's the difference between the Chiefs, Bills, and us. Yeah, I mean, I could certainly see that. I think it's just different styles too. Like, I think if you really sit and watch the 3 of the quarterbacks that you're talking about, I think Mahomes and Allen just have a little bit more like gunslinger aggressive mentality than Justin Herbert does. Justin to me is a bit more conservative himself. So we'll see how that kind of changes. Maybe down the road there's a different offensive coordinator that can kind of coax a little bit more gunslinger mentality out of him. But it definitely needs to open up a little bit more than last week. And I think Joe Lombardi admitted that yesterday himself.
Yeah, it'll have to. We're not going to hold them to 19 points.
No, not this Chiefs team. Not this Chiefs team. All right, we're gonna dive back into the Chiefs offseason like we did last time with the Raiders. This is not going to be as extensive as the Raiders one was because the Raiders had an entire new coaching staff and basically like 55 new players on the roster. So this will be a little bit quicker, but we do want to kind of revisit this and make sure we have a conversation about the new players on the Chiefs that are kind of making an impact here. So that being said, Tyler is up here first. So Tyler, take it away, man.
Yep, I've got the coaching staff first. I also have a bit of a cough, so if I cough halfway through this, I apologize. So here's the main guys, of course. Andy Reid, no surprise, 8 postseason appearances, 6 division titles, 4 consecutive AFC championship games, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and 1 title. Yeah, he's pretty good. And that's not even counting the Eagles stuff, which I'm sure Alex can talk about off the top of his head. And it's a really rare case of a team be able to keep that is this good and consistently good, be able to keep all of their guys. Now we can get into why Bieniemy has not been hired and all those sort of things, but I won't. But Bieniemy's been here since 2013, but their coordinator in 2018. Dave Tube, who's been a head coaching candidate for what seems like 5-6 years now. He's been their special teams coordinator since 2013. He's also their assistant head coach now, so that's interesting. Steve Spagnuolo, I can't remember if I'm saying his name correctly. He's been there since 2019. And I always say that I never thought the Chiefs defense was all that good, but they play such complementary defense with the offense where it's like you put so much stress on the opposing offense that they make mistakes. And his kind of defense really does a great job taking the ball away. This group with the Mahomes era, 12-4, 12-4, 14-2, 12-5. So yeah, the Chiefs are pretty good. Some other coaches to highlight. Andy Heck has been there since 2013. I think they do a pretty solid job with their linemen most every year. Last year with Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, of course. So that's a pretty good group. And then Matt Nagy. I didn't even know that he was on the team until Steven mentioned it. But he's back after a not so great Bears run as the head coach to be the offensive assistant and QB coach. Other than that, this has been the same coaching staff, give or take, for years now. We know what to expect. We know who's there, and they're a good team.
Yeah, you want to talk about, why the Chiefs offense is so good. This is why, they keep most of their guys around. I'm curious to see kind of how life changes without Mike Kafka, who's the offensive coordinator with the Giants at this point, actually calling plays with Brian Daboll. So not a ton of changes, right? They're always good at special teams. They're always good on offense. They have a very high floor because of those two things. And then Steve Spagnuolo, I think he's not necessarily an elite defensive coordinator, but I think he's able to kind of scrap things together, and he loves to blitz, loves to pressure. And I think it obviously creates a very opportunistic defense. So, not much to add about the Chiefs coaching staff because everybody's been there forever.
Yeah. Steve Spagnuolo, I think, is kind of an underrated defensive coordinator at this point. Back in the day when he was getting the most out of some of those Giants teams to all the way to now, where I think, considering what the Chiefs have had on defense, they've never been this defensive juggernaut. It speaks to staying around for as long as he has, even though the Chiefs defense, he has never been like elite. I think he's been a huge part of what they've done. Obviously, Andy Reid to me right now is still the best head coach in the league until Bill Belichick learns how to draft.
Or hire people
or pick an offensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy, obviously, you're just kind of looking at consistency at that point, and I think all the Chiefs players are really familiar with him. Mahomes has a great relationship with him, obviously. So at this point, you kind of know what to expect there, and it just serves as a great contrast to what we saw from the Raiders this week, what we saw from the Broncos last night, where Kansas City has just been the model of consistency for a decade since they've hired Andy Reid at this point. And everyone else in the AFC West has kind of been cycling through coaches for quite a while at this point. So they run a tight ship, and the Chargers are going to experience that in this game and any future games against the Chiefs, just because they've been this way forever compared to the Raiders and the Broncos, and even the Chargers to some extent, who are still trying to kind of find a coaching staff that is going to be there long term, even though we do currently believe in Brandon Staley.
Yep, absolutely. Appreciate the super sticker from Mama Shun as well. All right, we'll move on here. Of course, have to talk about some of the free agency moves that the Chiefs have made. You can talk about Tyreek Hill to start their veteran departures, if you will. They also lost Melvin Ingram, who's currently with the Dolphins as well. Tyrann Mathieu down there in New Orleans, along with Daniel Sorensen, sticking around together, those two. And then Charvarius Ward leaves to San Francisco. Played a fantastic game for the Niners on Sunday. So a lot of different moving parts there, a lot of veterans. So they went out and replaced them with a lot of young guys, which Alex is going to talk about in a little bit. But they replaced Tyreek Hill with Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling in free agency. Those two players were... at least in terms of the receivers, were second and third on the team in receiving. Juju Smith-Schuster, 6 catches, 79 yards on Sunday against the Cardinals. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the tall, lanky speedster, You can kind of consider him the Michael Davis version of a wide receiver, just big, tall, fast kind of player. 4 catches, 44 yards on Sunday against the Cardinals. So very different mix of receivers as opposed to kind of what they've had in the past. They've never really had a Juju Smith-Schuster type of slot receiver. Really gives them a very interesting blend of balance with Travis Kelce, because like I said, they've typically had Tyreek, Travis Kelce, and then basically just a bunch of speedy yak receivers. So that's not necessarily Juju Smith-Schuster's game. So very curious about how that works out. Tyler has here safety/kicker Justin Reed. I don't know if you guys watched the audio of him being told that he was gonna go kick. It was actually really, really cool to see. I guess he was a kicker in high school and played some soccer as well, and then actually got to kick in some college games back in the day. So Justin Reed as a kicker, I think, is a really fun story. They did sign a practice squad kicker today, but as a safety, it's a very different kind of safety than what they are used to having in Tyrann Mathieu. He's kind of playing more in the box, more inside, being a physical presence, as opposed to Tyrann Mathieu, who was essentially a slot hybrid corner, if you will, for the last few seasons. Really a coverage guy. Reed's a little bit more of a thumper, a little bit more of a blitzer, and that's who he's going to be much better in run defense for sure. But he's not the honey badger by any means. Carlos Dunlap and Danny Shelton along the defensive line, very recent additions, both signed in training camp. Mostly depth players. Danny Shelton was on the Giants last year and is a big, very big boy up in the middle of the defense there. And then Carlos Dunlap, it's kind of their backup pass rushing type. And then Ronald Jones, the running back, lost his job already to Alex's guy, Isaiah Pacheco, who I'm sure he'll talk about in a little bit. But he is on the roster, was obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers leading rusher over the last few seasons. So these are the notable additions and losses from free agency for the Chiefs.
Yeah, my bad. I forgot to include Jerick McKinnon. So my bad. Over Ronald Jones.
Wasn't he on the team last year, though, or no?
Good question. Never mind. I never make mistakes.
Yeah, you're good. I think you're fine. All right. Alex, you can take it away, man.
Yeah, we did an episode on the AFC West draft classes in general, and I think by far and away our favorite non-Chargers draft class was the Chiefs draft class, and just all of the guys that they were able to pick up. You kind of just look at the group over here. The big loss for them for this game is Trey McDuffie, who just recently went on IR after suffering a hamstring injury, but really they have 6 guys here that are going to play significant roles in this game. George Karlaftis had 6 quarterback pressures last week against the Cardinals. Sky Moore, who had a big catch for 30 yards against the Cardinals as well, is going to be one of their big presence in the receiver room with Juju and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Guys like Brian Cook and Leo Chenal are going to have to play as well. And just because Trey McDuffie got injured, Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson will as well. Isaiah Pacheco had 12 rushes for 62 yards and a touchdown last week. So, of course, my propaganda. But, I think he showed why he should have been drafted a little bit higher than the 7th round by the Chiefs. Sucks that he's there. But, all of these guys are going to have to contribute in this game. And we don't normally say that about Chiefs draft classes. But after, you have losses like Tyreek Hill and you have losses like Tyrann Mathieu and everything that they kind of lost in the roster turnover in the offseason, it just made their rookie class so much more important. And so far, it really seems like they've nailed it. And all of these guys are going to play pretty pivotal roles, at least, even on the back end of their roster, aside from probably Darian Kennard, who's not going to play, and Nazi Johnson. They have everyone who's probably going to play at least 10% of the snaps or so on their respective sides of the ball at minimum, and that is, I think, a indicator of a really productive draft class. And all these guys are going to get after it, and we were quite high on a few of these guys before and after the draft. So, yeah, I am concerned about this draft class that the Chiefs have assembled in this game, just particularly because they've, already shown their production.
Yeah, very good draft class that, like you said, we all liked. Some people obviously pointing this out. Trent McDuffie is on injured reserve, so that escalated very quickly for him. He will be missing at least the next 4 games. Alex did mention that he was hurt, but sounded like some people missed that conversation. So Joshua Williams is going to start for the Kansas City Chiefs for the next few games as well. Sky Moore only had the 1 catch against the Arizona Cardinals, so there wasn't a whole lot to go around as Patrick Mahomes is, kind of force feeding Travis Kelce, Juju, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But I would definitely think that Sky Moore gets more heavily involved as the season goes along. And Leo Chenal, who we all loved, didn't play a ton, but as the Chiefs kind of go through the season, I'm sure that will increase for sure.
Yeah, good group. I mean, we're looking at the Chargers, who I don't believe JT Woods played a defensive snap, and Isaiah Spiller was inactive, and Otito played 6. And so, obviously Jamar, that's a great pick, but he's just not going to be active. So Chiefs got a good class. Like, they're contributing immediately, for better or for worse. They're on the field. Of course, Trent McDuffie IR, but it's a good group. We felt good about them when they were drafted. We hated the fact that they went to the Chiefs. And hopefully, just for one day, maybe 2 days this year, they could be a complete ass.
Yeah, hopefully, for sure. All right, we'll dive back into the Chargers side of things here. We are going to do this segment every single week called Victory Formation. This was a play on words given to me by Brooke, my wife. I have to give her a shout out because she told me to. So, Brooke, thanks for listening. So basically, Victory Formation here is basically things that we need to see from the Chargers in order to pull off a victory every single week. You can call this keys to victory, if you will. Alex, we'll start with you, man. What's one thing that you think the Chargers have to do in order to pull out a victory on Thursday night?
One of the things they have to do is that Brandon Staley has to be less dumb than Cliff Kingsbury. I think that should be accomplishable. But yeah, the Cardinals game plan for the Chiefs was just horrendous. Everyone's already talked about sort of the high blitz rate. They just didn't get anything much out of their, offensive players. Their offensive designs weren't very good as well. And so I hope that Brandon Staley and, Joe Lombardi and the whole coaching staff can just play a game where you keep up with the Chiefs. You don't fall too far behind. The Chargers have always been pretty close games with the Chiefs too, and I think even in the Anthony Lynn era, we're pretty well coached against them in some respects. So I just want to see, a well coached football game, and unlike Nathaniel Hackett last night, not using your timeouts poorly and doing all that kind of stuff, because Andy Reid and the Chiefs will take advantage of that 10 times out of 10. And the Chiefs are a team where you can have a 20-point lead and it can evaporate in all of about 5 minutes. Right. So I think just seeing the Chargers put together a well-rounded coaching game, especially even on a short week, that's going to be key to keeping up with the Chiefs on the road.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Chargers got off to hot starts against the Chiefs in both of their matchups last season, and then obviously the Chiefs were able to kind of claw their way back in, and of course made the first game a little interesting. Second game, they of course came out on top. So it is going to be, I think that kind of points to good coaching, in my opinion, is being able to start hot against a team like the Chiefs, and I'm curious to see obviously if that continues. Tyler, your thoughts here. Of course, you can add on to Alex's point, and then your victory formation point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add in related to that. Asante Samuel Jr. and Michael Davis, especially if JC's out, which we don't know, they got to show up. I mean, it was a really cool story that Asante Samuel Jr. battled, and I admire him for that. But he did allow 9 catches for 108 yards and a touchdown. Davis 2 catches for 37. They got to step up. Because the Chargers do not want to have to blitz, and they don't want to have to do extra things. They want to be able to rush 4, rush 5 or whatever and get home. So those guys got to hold up, and that really goes for the whole secondary, but those two in particular. This is no longer Devontae Adams, so hopefully we can do better than 9 catches for 108 with Asante Samuel Jr. But on the flip side, or I guess in front of them, the other guys have to step up and rush the passer. You're not getting 4.5 sacks from Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa this week. I don't think, although I won't tell Khalil Mack that because I feel like he would go out of his way to get 6. But other guys got to step up. We had Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, Chris Rumpf, Kyle Van Noy, Jerry Tillery, Otito Igbonia. They combined for 2 pressures. That's not good enough. Now, I know you didn't sign Joseph Day to be a pass rusher. I know you didn't sign Johnson to be a pass rusher. And I know that Kyle Van Noy was technically playing some linebacker more than edge rusher, but you need more than 2 pressures from that group. Whoever it is, edge rusher or interior, they have to create some more pressure. I totally believe that Joey Bosa last time in Arrowhead literally took over that game and made sure the Chiefs didn't quite get as many points as they could have. So I guess he could do it again. And Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are a great duo, but you just need a little bit more. And without JC Jackson, you need these guys to step up.
Yeah, and there's obviously some designer packages will be thrown in there. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I loved they bring in a 6 defensive back, and they kept the 2 linebackers on the field, and they had the 3 defensive linemen at certain points. Of course, Khalil, Joey, and then Morgan Fox. So essentially, they were in like a 3-2-6 look. There were a couple times where they bring Kyle up to the line of scrimmage, they bring Derwin up to the line of scrimmage, and they did a stunt game around Joey Bosa, and then Khalil Mack had a one-on-one on the opposite side against Colton Miller, and it resulted in one of Khalil Mack's sacks. So that's kind of something that we've seen from the past from the Patriots with kind of that 3-2-6 look. Kyle Van Noy, Dante Hightower kind of blitzing up the middle, blitzing up the A gaps, looping around, doing stunts in games. So I loved watching what Brandon Staley did in that regard to kind of cook up some pressure against Derek Carr. So we've seen Drew Tranquil have some moments as a blitzer against the Kansas City Chiefs in the past. He's very good at that. Kyle Van Noy did come close to Derek Carr a couple of times on some blitz action. So those 2 guys I think will play a part in that role as well. All right. So my point here, I'm going to talk about this being a very important wide receiver game for the Chargers. I'm not just talking about like bouncing back and being okay. I need to see Mike Williams and Josh Palmer dominate this game and really just attack the Kansas City Chiefs corners, because that is not something the Arizona Cardinals did at all this week. Outside of like 1 deep shot to Marquise Hollywood Brown, everything was like 0 to 9 yards for the Arizona Cardinals offense. Just did not make any kind of sense to me. Their leading receiver, at least in terms of yards per route run, was a guy named Greg Dortch, who Alex and I were kind of joking before the show. We had never heard of him until looking at this stat sheet. And even that, man, his yards per route run was 1.5. So you had Marquise Hollywood Brown, who they traded, as we all know, a first-round pick for. He was at 1.02 yards per route run. Andy Isabella, who only played 15 snaps, 0.67 yards per route run. AJ Green, 0.42 yards per route run. They did not test the Kansas City secondary at all in any kind of facet of the game. So you're going up against the secondary again that does not have its best corner, who was already a rookie, not necessarily an established guy. You have Rashad Fenton and Josh Williams probably starting on the outside. This needs to be a game where Mike Williams and Josh Palmer dominate. And I'm not talking about like a cute little 50 yards. Like, I need both of them over 85 yards, both of them, being a threat in the red zone. And, I think they're up for the task. Right? I think Josh Palmer is a fantastic player. There were some really good routes that he ran on Sunday, got open, and then Justin Herbert had some pressure and did not, was not able to find him. So I think you could make an argument for Mike Williams in that same kind of vein as well. Neither of them were able to really kind of assert themselves, and they need them to do that this week. And as DZ points out, Jalen Guyton, I think you need to see a couple big plays to Jalen Guyton this week as well.
Yeah, the good news with Mike Williams, after his rookie year, 22 catches, 344 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 2-point conversions, and a rushing touchdown in Arrowhead. So if there's a get-right game for Mike Williams, it's this one.
Yeah, he loves Kansas City, man. All right, we'll move on here next. We're going to get to our key matchups and our bolt predictions. Tyler, why don't you kind of talked about the cornerbacks, but did you have another key matchup that you want to focus in on this week?
Yeah, I wanted to go Nasir Adderley and Alohi Gilman versus the deep ball, but I actually want to switch it over to whoever it ends up being. I don't quite know because we couldn't tell what, like, it's Derek Carr. He's not moving. He's not really mobile. Patrick Mahomes is going to move. And I feel like every single year we're saying, please, for the love of God, I'm pretty sure it's Alex that says this too. Someone, for the love of God, put a QB spy on Patrick Mahomes. Because for whatever reason, he ends up with 30 yards against the Chargers, 40 yards, whatever. He just does it. And he's talented. So whether it's Kyle Van Noy, whether it's Kenneth Murray, who apparently looked great, and I think he did, I just didn't watch it yet. Whoever that is, that matchup to me is super key in this game. Yes, there's a lot more other things and a lot more matchups to keep an eye on, but to me, like, that's just a back breaker. That's a defense breaker. You have great coverage, maybe even a good pass rush, but then Mahomes just runs for 20 yards. It's like, what a back breaker. It's not really rewarding your coverage either. So whoever that ends up being, and I don't quite know yet because we haven't seen this defense against a mobile quarterback yet. But whoever ends up being, that's the matchup I'm watching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure when we talk about Patrick Mahomes running, I still have nightmares of the Mexico City game where he had like 60 yards. And I'm just like, and so many of them were just back-breaking third downs, like Tyler said. And we already saw that the Chargers kind of struggled getting off the field last week against the Raiders, particularly in the first half, beginning of the second half with Devontae Adams. So, I mean, and that was talking about Derek Carr, a quarterback that doesn't have a ton of mobility. Patrick Mahomes is not a mobile quarterback, but obviously he can run whenever it's necessary. And if you don't, limit him in the pocket, and obviously that's kind of like hard to do also because, of course, you have to worry about all the Chiefs receiving options and worry about Travis Kelce and all that. But it would just be so deflating to play, 2 really good downs and then have Patrick Mahomes run for 10 yards on 3rd and 9, right? And that's, just kind of what's been happening in the Chargers, what's been happening in the other teams. So, you do have to prepare for that as well. Yeah, I don't know if this is really a matchup with the Chiefs, but for me, I'm watching Austin Eckler's snap count percentage, particularly in this game. The Chargers gave him 49% of the offensive snaps last week and decided to kind of approach it in a running back by committee kind of way. With Sony Michel playing more than I thought he would, Joshua Kelly being up there in snaps as well. So we just need to see more Austin Eckler this game. That doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of rushing, especially if you do get down to the Chiefs at some point. Obviously, you can't really run the ball too effectively. You're not going to run the ball too much on the Chiefs anyway. But I do think you need to see him get more involved in the receiving game and more around all over the field. He's an explosive weapon for a reason.
Is he frozen for you too, Tyler?
Yes, but it's
and
a great
so
point.
yeah, that's
there we go.
Just what we need to see from Eckler and that whole group in general.
It sounds like Alex was frozen for a little bit. I do agree that Austin Eckler absolutely needs to be a little bit more involved on offense this week. I would love to see him getting into some one-on-one matchups versus the Chiefs linebackers and really test them. I think, obviously we feel better about that group of players than previous years when you're dealing with like Anthony Hitchens and those kind of players. So, I hope that this is a good Austin Eckler, and he had a great game against the Chiefs in the first matchup. So hopefully that continues this week. We didn't really talk about Trey Pipkins against Max Crosby last week, and he looked really good. I was really kind of trying to focus in on him. Looks like we lost Alex there for a second. But yeah, I was trying to really focus in on Trey during the broadcast angle. It was obviously a very difficult, but I thought he held up very well against Max Crosby, considering where he has been in his development. And of course, where Max Crosby is at this stage of his career as one of the best edge rushers in the league. So some very, very good reps against Max Crosby. So there was a better display of being able to counter and match Max Crosby's counters than previous years. So I do think that his work with Duke has really showed up so far. But I need to see it again, man. I need to see him string together some games and be able to prove that, he can not just be, solid, but he can potentially be more than that. So, Alex talked about George Karlaftis and his 6 pressures. Carlos Dunlap, a very proven edge rusher in this league. Frank Clark is still on the Chiefs. You have Michael Dana, who had 6 pressures against the Cardinals as well. So the Chiefs have a pretty good edge room. I don't think they have obviously a Max Crosby level player, but this is definitely an important Trey Pipkins game. And I think, you also need to see him be more of a linchpin in the run game. That was kind of, the strength of him versus Storm Norton was his ability as a run blocker, at least in my opinion. And I would love to see him be a little bit more involved there. And of course, the Chargers need to be better on the ground in general. But I wanted to give Trey Pipkins a little shine for the way he played on Sunday after rewatching it. He only gave up 2 pressures in arguably, one of the biggest games of the season. So excited to see where Trey can take this, man, because if he is, only allowing 2 pressures against Max Crosby, he should be shining in a game against a rookie edge rusher like George Karlaftis and a washed up Carlos Dunlap and washed up Frank Clark, who he's frankly kind of dominated in the past. So this is an important, another important step for Trey Pipkins as he looks to build his resume, if you will.
I always get these mixed up. Your right defensive end or outside linebacker lines up over the left tackle, yeah?
Yeah, right defensive end would be lining up against Rashawn Slater.
Yeah, that was George Karlaftis last week, so I guess we'll never hear from him.
Bye, George. You ain't getting 6 pressures this week if that's the case. Oh, man. All right, we'll get to our bold predictions. Did not go super great for Alex and I last week, but that's okay. The Chargers still came out on top. So, Tyler, we'll start with you, man. What's your bold prediction for this week?
Gerald Everett has more receiving yards than Travis Kelce.
Oh, spicy. Explain, please.
We have Derwin James.
Fair, very fair. Derwin all over the place last week. I think we probably see him cover Travis Kelce a little bit more than he covered Darren Waller. All right, my bold prediction. I'm gonna go. Let's see. I went with the interior defensive line showing up as pass rushers last week. Again, that did not go very well. So I'm gonna pivot back to the linebackers, man. I mentioned Drew Tranquill and his past history as a blitzer. Kyle Van Noy was very close. We've seen Kenneth Murray have some success as a pass rusher. Quietly played pretty good on Sunday, in my opinion. So I'm going to say we get 1 sack out of the linebacker room, and I'm going to say we get 4 tackles for loss from that group this week. Big game for the linebackers.
Yeah, I'm not bold enough to predict Gerald Everett getting more yards than Travis Kelce. I hope Derwin James has that great of a game, and if he does, then that probably means that the Chargers ultimately won on Thursday. I'm gonna do it. All right, I think that DeAndre Carter follows it up, 4 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown. I think that he, subs in for Keenan this game again. I think that Mike Williams will have a bigger game. So does Josh Palmer. But I think DeAndre Carter will prove that last week was not just a fluke, and that obviously he is more than just a returner.
So if you think DeAndre Carter has 80 yards and a touchdown, and Mike Williams and Josh Palmer both outproduce him, we're getting like a 400-yard game from Justin Herbert?
I mean, we've already talked about how the Chiefs' corners and safeties are kind of banged up right now. So, I mean, I think it's kind of going to be a shootout between Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes anyway. So I don't think that's too out of the open in terms of chances of happening.
Do you think we see a DeAndre Carter rushed this week?
I mean, I might need to take, 10 receiving yards away and then add that to an end around touchdown. I don't know. Haven't totally thought
2
that
touchdowns.
through yet.
Okay. 70 yards, 3 catches.
Maybe add another touchdown as a, kick return. A lot
punt
of ways
return too.
Punt return as well. Now we're up to 4 touchdowns. But yeah, Wildcat. But yeah, I do think DeAndre Carter is going to have another follow-up good game.
We got teased by Anthony Lynn with Joe Reed being the second coming of Percy Harvin, but it's really DeAndre Carter 4 years later.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, my goodness. All right. So we are going to do our weekly league-wide picks on Saturday during our Q&A. But we are going to do, what's up, Tyler?
Oh, score prediction.
Yes, we are going to do a score prediction for the Chargers. Last week, I forget who was closest last week. I don't have the sheet up. Does anybody have the sheet up?
I
know
said
it wasn't me.
27-24, so I was kind of lower.
I said 31-23, I think.
Yeah, I said 30-24 too.
This.
So our score predictions were not super good last week, but we all predicted the Chargers win, and that was what happened. So, Tyler, you want to kick us off here first?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a weird one. I think this might end up being a product of the Chargers maybe not be able to get things going, maybe without Keenan Allen, without Donald Parham. But I also think the Chiefs are facing a Chargers defense that seems pretty good. So I think it'll actually be kind of a lowish scoring affair, which it's so going to be wrong. Now the Chargers winning 24-21.
All right. So for what it's worth, the over-under in this game is 54 total points. The Chiefs are currently favored by 3.5. So I guess I should have led with that one. But Alex, what's your score prediction for Thursday night?
I do think it's going to be a pretty big shootout. I got the Chiefs winning 31-27, though. I do think short week, you're missing Keenan Allen, you're missing J.C. Jackson, and they could win in spite of that. But those are two pretty pivotal losses to have at this point. Had they had those two players, I probably would pick the Chargers in this game, coming off of that, momentum, shifting win against the Raiders. But I still think Chargers haven't had the best luck in Arrowhead, recently, although they did win the game last year. And they do have the 2018 win in their pocket as well. But the game that they won the year before that was the one against was it who?
Don't worry about it. No. Don't worry about it.
Who was it? I don't remember. Henny,
Henny?
Pen, whoever it was. I don't know. But yeah, I still think the Chiefs win this game until the Chargers kind of, I guess, prove it against this version of the Chiefs team, particularly after the explosive offensive week they had last week. Would love to see a Chargers win. Obviously, would not be surprised at all if they did win, in spite of everything kind of going against them in this one. But I did pick the Chargers to split the season series with the Chiefs, and I do think this is their loss out of those two games.
Yeah, I could certainly see that happening. I mean, the Chiefs are so good. Papa Shun here, beat the Chiefs 2-0 on Thursday. Appreciate the super chat there for sure. I don't know if you guys saw what Nate Tice said about this, but the Kansas City Chiefs had 66 plays on offense against the Arizona Cardinals. Any idea how many first downs they had?
Okay, hold on. No, hold on. No, this is important. Hold on. 25.
Alex, any guesses? Or do you know?
No, I don't know. I'm going to say 30.
They had 33 first downs. Oh. So they had 66 plays on offense, 33 first downs. That means they were getting a first down basically every other play on offense, which is just an absurd amount of first downs and production on offense. So I agree with Alex, right? The Cardinals defensive game plan last week was trash. Like, you don't blitz Patrick Mahomes that often and get away with it, especially when you have corners, like the Cardinals do. So I do think like there is some of like Patrick Mahomes is, I think, clearly on a mission to put up as many points, as many yards as possible this year. I think Andy Reid is as well. But I do feel better about the Chiefs, the Chargers ability to stop the Chiefs offense than obviously the Cardinals did. So I think we could see this be a low scoring game. I'm not betting on that given the two quarterbacks that are playing in this game. I think this is going to be a high scoring affair with, primetime Justin Herbert, primetime Patrick Mahomes. But I do think the Chargers have enough on defense to win this game. I predicted that the Chargers would split with the Chiefs as well. For whatever reason, I feel better about their chances of winning at Arrowhead before the Chiefs are kind of really into a groove with this new offense. So I'm going to go with a Chargers win as well. Obviously Arrowhead is a very tough place to play. And it is a Thursday night game, short week. You're traveling, but I do think the Chargers win this game, and I'm going to go 33-31. So very close win, both teams in the 30s.
What do you feel like their philosophy will be with fourth downs? Do you think they maintain that like last year, or kind of just if it's 4th and 1, we can QB sneak it or hand it off to Horvath?
I think we see a strong swing in the opposite direction from Sunday. I mean, they went for the 4th down with the quarterback sneak, but they were very conservative in that regard as well. I think some of that is just kind of the way the defense was playing. Some of that is obviously J.K. Scott. I think we see Brandon Staley be very aggressive again, because that's what he's talked about, right? Is being able to outscore the Chiefs. And so I think we see the Chargers be very much more aggressive in this game. That's why I talked about the wide receivers being kind of the key thing here for me. And I do think we see that happen this week.
Cool.
All right. So we had, that was most of our, like I said, we did not have 35 minutes of Raiders talk in this one. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. Alex, any final thoughts for you ahead of this matchup between the Chargers and Chiefs on Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, I mean, I hope the Chargers win this game. I would not be surprised at all if we did, and hopefully we have a happy podcast on Thursday and we go into a 10-day break with the Chargers up 2-0. That would be awesome. So yeah, just rooting for the Chargers in this one, obviously.
Yeah, beating the Raiders made me feel better about the Chargers in this division, but the Broncos looking like they did made me feel even better. So if the Chargers do lose against the Chiefs, I don't feel quite as bad. It doesn't feel quite as tight because the Broncos did not look great. So yeah, hopefully we're celebrating a win. We will be here after the game.
Yeah, I have to say, I feel like this 4-horse race in the AFC West was a little bit exaggerated. I do think this ultimately does become Chargers and Chiefs down the stretch. We have one team in Vegas that doesn't believe in offensive linemen or cornerbacks, and the other team that doesn't believe in their $250 million quarterback. So fun combination. We didn't talk about this a ton. I will say this is going to be a much bigger test for the Chargers run defense. The Chiefs ran for 130 yards against the Cardinals. Again, it was a blowout, right? But all 3 of the Chiefs running backs that touched the ball averaged over 5 yards a carry against the Cardinals, who were a tad better than the Chargers against the run last year. Granted, J.J. Watt didn't play in this one, but we didn't talk about it much. I wanted to throw that out there. This is going to be a very tough test for the Chargers' interior defensive line and their linebackers as they try and play light boxes against Mahomes and be able to stop the run effectively on Thursday.
Yeah, that's a really good call.
So that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Appreciate everybody that was in here in the chat tonight. We had over 300 pretty much consistently for the whole show. So we really appreciate that. Had a great reaction to, or turnout, I should say, to our recap from the Raiders victory. So we hope that is a similar result on Thursday night as we go live after the show. Arjun's analytics episode will be live tomorrow morning. And then Thursday morning, I will have an interview with a Chiefs writer and podcaster for you guys to get a little bit more insight on that game as we prepare for it. So as always, if you are listening to this, please leave a rating or review. If you're watching, make sure to like the video, subscribe, turn those notifications on, make sure you're not missing anything. And as always, bolt up.